Welcome everybody to a new episode of Fairly Legal. It is. We never know how to start this thing.
I feel like saying, well, it's Groundhog Day again.
We wanted to do our show today based on kind of give you guys a sense of what is going on in the world of the legal community with respect to COVID. I mean, it's COVID, it's implications to you, because it absolutely has implications to us. It may have an implication to you in the future. The question is, what's going on in the moment? And right now, I wouldn't say we're at a grinding halt. There was a time when we were at a grinding halt. We're now beginning to grind forward at a slow pace.
Right. Yeah.
But it's still a grind.
Again, I'm dressed up today, which is a rare occasion.
We get to feel a little more like lawyers today.
And then I hate to admit this, but I didn't read the notice from the court well enough. The court didn't even want me on video. All they wanted me to do was call in on the telephone to do a status hearing. So I blew a shirt and tie for nothing.
Yeah, which is, normally we've been wearing polo shirts and shorts for the most part. Shorts. Sometimes Corey shows up with less than shorts. It's very disturbing. But the reality is there just hasn't been much going on as far as the court has been concerned. As the court system has been trying to figure out, what to do with COVID. And so the answer that they've come up with to a great degree is virtual.
Yeah, which works in most circumstances because the client is involved in litigation almost not at all. And as it relates between the court, the judge never sees your client until the day of trial. So we don't need to involve our clients in anything. We can argue motions over Zoom. We can have telephonic status, or we can have status conferences with the court. Because a lot of times the court will just haul you in to say, hey, what's happening? What's going on in your case? Which we love because it means driving 30 minutes to the courthouse.
Going down the courthouse.
Parking for 15 minutes, walking into the courthouse, going through the metal detectors, making your way up the elevator. And then you get up there and they go, okay, is there anything happening in your case? Nope. You're still set for trial? Yep. Okay, well, thanks for coming in, counsel. And then you're done.
Right.
And you're like, then you go home.
But with COVID, it was, what was the answer going to be like? Do we all walk in with sticks that are 6 foot long sticks? Do we walk in with tape measures, trying to make sure everyone steers clear of me? The reality is it's just not workable. And so what happens is claims still go forward. Accidents, car accidents, whether it's an issue with a car accident or criminal cases, family law disputes. All these claims, business disputes, they're all still happening. So at some point, the court system has to start moving forward again, because we're going to have literally thousands of cases that just begin to stack up one on top of another. And so the court has said, hey, it's time to begin moving forward, and we're moving forward in kind of a virtual world. And so for a lot of cases, and we're going to talk about it a little bit now, and that is the big thing we want you to know is that claims can still be made and that can still go forward. If you have a claim that something has happened to you, you've been injured in some fashion, and you're like, I'm not sure if I can even do anything now with COVID. The short answer is absolutely you can. You can absolutely move that thing forward. And there is just going to be a little more wrinkles to it as we go forward now.
Right. And actually, virtual world, I thought I was going to be really anti, but I'm warming up to it. I'm slowly warming up to it. The only hard part for me so far has been the deposition process, because a lot of times in a deposition, and if you don't know what a deposition is, if you've never done it, it's a sworn statement that you give under oath. It's usually the attorneys and a court reporter and the witness are there, and that's about it. And you're just in a conference room and you're asking questions. But sometimes those depositions are very document intensive. And it's not like you know exactly what's going to happen in a deposition. Sometimes there are surprises. And so, there are times during a deposition, many times when I've said, hey, stop, let's go off the record for a second. I'll run back into the file room, I'll pull up in the file, pull out a document that I needed and run in there, which you can do when the deposition's in the conference room. But if I'm doing it on Zoom, I need to have everything already in a Dropbox so that I can share the screen and show the witness the document. Also video. A lot of times we have a video screen up, we're showing surveillance video from a hotel or a restaurant or whatever, a grocery store, and you're having the witness watch it with you, and you're stopping it. You're saying, okay, and you're pointing. How do I point something out to a witness on a video? Can you do it? Yeah. Do I have the technological capability? Not yet, but I'm going to have to get it because I got to do one of those in about 3 weeks. I got to figure out how to have the witness look at a specific point in the video, a spot, and say, okay, here's where the spill was. If I'm not in the same room with them, that creates some issues. We're going to have to get past that. But other than that, with that one caveat with depositions, virtual world is not too shabby. I can deal with it. I can.
In fact, Corey's going to really love it because he's allowed to wear this. What you may not know is he's not wearing pants underneath the thing.
I totally am.
No, I mean,
the
reality is that it allows us to be able to do more. And when it comes to where people are, one of the hardest things when it comes to doing litigation is scheduling, getting everybody scheduled that they can all appear at a person's office or something like that. Those can actually be tough. And actually, we have found that it's easier to schedule these things because you get more witnesses coming in and they don't have to come in. The witness can literally come from home.
Right.
Or the witness can, I took a deposition of a company representative, and rather than going through all this effort of how are we going to get this deposition scheduled, the guy was on a job site in Utah. He didn't have to leave his job site in Utah. He stayed up there. He was on Zoom, and we did the deposition. He stayed up in Utah. We were down here. So there's a number of things that actually can be really, really helpful. But Corey's right. I mean, most clients, if you've been injured in some way, or you've got a claim that's pending, it's not going to be super meaningful to you. It's something that's impacting the legal community, the lawyer side of it. For you, the impact is simply navigating through it. And that's one of the things that lawyers can help with, is kind of navigating that process. There's still going to be doctors that have their offices open. You can come in and treat. You need a car fixed. Their shops are open now for business. Get those cars taken care of. Whatever the issue is, those can all get taken care of. You need a surgery. Surgery centers are back open, up and running. We're getting surgeries taken care of. I mean, all those things can still happen. The big question mark that still sits out there is, when are you going to get a trial? If you have to go to trial, if you have to go that distance, which thankfully for most people is like, I literally don't want that. But for us, I mean, we have to answer that question. It's like, if you have to go to a trial, when is that going to happen? That's a big question mark. That still sits out there.
And understand, we practice in the area of civil litigation. We're civil attorneys. We're not criminal attorneys. They're civil and criminal. Those are the two worlds. And we don't overlap. There's very little overlap between civil and criminal. I once in a blue moon will run across a criminal issue, but it's super rare. And over at the courthouse, among the judges, we are kind of second-class citizens, really, because they're constitutional.
Right. There's a reason we're second-class citizens.
Yeah, not that they don't like us. And I mean, civil days are fine, and they're interesting, a lot of different issues, and not that they don't like civil attorneys or civil issues. But because the constitutional protections for criminal lawyers or for criminal defendants, they have to give criminal trials, criminal motions, all that has to have priority over civil. And so in terms of the trials, their first priority when things begin to normalize or they start doing trials is going to be criminal trials, not civil.
It has to be. I mean, and every lawyer understands it's an obligation. Right. You have a constitutional right to a speedy trial in a criminal setting. That constitutional right does not apply in a civil setting. Yeah. When parties suing over money or over contracts, that's just not, that same requirement isn't there. It is there for criminal cases. So criminal cases are going to get top billing.
Yeah, and I mean, under the Constitution, you have the right to a jury trial under the 7th Amendment. It just doesn't say when.
Here's the other, Corey and I want you guys to be aware, because we would love to tell you that all of this is going to be over in the next 6 months. And I know people say, oh, after the election, it's all going to be over. Here's reality. The court system is spending money right now to revamp courtrooms to make them what we call COVID-friendly courtrooms. The court system is spending money to create and build courtrooms that we call COVID courtrooms in the convention center. So the money's not getting spent if it's going to be over in a few months. This money's getting spent for a reason. I have to assume this is going to be with us for a stretch. Right. We're going to be in this COVID era of litigation and trial for a longer period of time than I can guarantee that either of us want or that anybody else really, really wants, but it's here. We're going to have to adapt.
Yeah. You may not know this either, but the way trials are scheduled are you get a trial date, you'll get an order setting civil jury trial. That's what it's called. And it will say you have a jury trial starting on, let's say, November 5th, 2020. But it also will say something on there like it's on a 5-week stack. So there's 5 weeks starting November 5th for the 5 weeks after that when your case can go to trial. Unfortunately, there are 25 other cases that are on that same, what we call a trial stack, same stack. So unless you're the oldest case, you're not going to go to trial that time. So you're going to get moved to the next available trial stack. And that's the way it normally works. You rarely get a trial date and, oh, it's the trial date and today's our trial and let's go to, we
love watching TV shows because TV shows always show like they have a crime or they have something that happens. And by the time the episode is over, they're in a courtroom.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't happen at any level, ever, anywhere. It takes years to get into an actual courtroom.
Or they sit around the conference table and like, oh, we got the Johnson trial today. Who's going to handle that?
There's a lot of work goes into a trial.
Somebody's been handling that case for a long time before that day. You don't just roll into court and say, oh, I'm going to try the case today. No, that doesn't work like that.
So if you find yourself in a situation where like you have a claim or you think you do, or something's going on in your life, don't ever believe like, hey, COVID's got me. There's nothing I can do. Nothing's happening. They are moving forward. It's just going to look a lot different. If you were ever involved in a claim in the past and you get a claim going forward in the future, it's going to look different than what you had in the past. The system is just looking different. We're all adapting to it. And some of the adaptations, like Corey said, are actually not bad. I've done the Zoom meeting depositions. They're not that bad. The hard thing about them is like what Corey said, when you're trying to go through and you're trying to do something maybe off the fly, and this is kind of a product of actually being a good lawyer. One of the big things that I always learned about being a good lawyer is being a good listener. And so sometimes the person's going to say something, because you've probably may have seen on TV, guys have scripts. I mean, people have scripts. And the reality is when you listen to an answer, sometimes they give you an answer that's great for you, but you don't have it right in front of you because it was off script. It was something that just kind of came off the cuff and you listened and you heard it. And that reminds you to go do something else. It's a little harder to do that on Zoom because your screen share may not be geared for that. But those are all things that we're all adapting to.
And all this applies to things that happen once we have to file a lawsuit. Up to the point where we file a lawsuit, COVID really hasn't changed the process at all. We're still settling cases. We're still resolving cases before filing a lawsuit, which is the majority of the cases that we handle are resolved before filing a lawsuit. It's only that rare handful of cases where there's a big dispute as to value, or maybe we're disputing who's actually at fault.
And the main reason we want to do this episode for you to talk about that, because you may sit back and say, then what's the point of the episode? The reality is it does impact resolving cases before, because sometimes we have clients that are like, well, if we can't settle for this much money, let's go to trial. And I'm like, no problem. But before, my conversation about going to trial was just talking about the nature of your case. Now the conversation is, I don't even know when we'll go. I mean, to give you some example, I had a trial setting here the last week. Court was same as Corey. You're on a video conference, and the court said, Mr. Wilson, when would you like to go? I've got a couple of available dates for you. The earliest one was December of 2021, and then she had a couple in 2022. And I said, honestly, Judge, you be honest with me. What's my COVID trial setting? She laughed and she goes, I'm going to give you 2022 because that 2021 one's not going to happen. And I said, okay, then I don't want it if it's not going to happen anyway. That's reality. The reality is trials are just getting pushed because the courts are still trying to figure it out. So you absolutely can move forward in a claim. And like Corey said, before we file a lawsuit, everything is pretty much normal now.
Yeah.
I mear back to it. You may have to wear a mask when you go somewhere, but we're back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wear a mask to the doctor's office. Wear your mask when you go pick up your car from the shop where you had it repaired. But other than that, it's not that different. You're going to, and we'll be able to resolve your claim. All that's done over email and mail. And so COVID has not impacted us in that way. But once we have to file a lawsuit, that is a different world, at least for us.
It
Even
is.
for the client, the only difference for the client is they're going to be doing their deposition over Zoom probably. And when they come in the office, they'll wear a mask. Other than that, it's no different. And then trial, I have no idea what a trial looks like because
We're just not there yet.
Yeah, no one's done one that I know
Just
of.
so that you know, there has not been a civil trial since COVID really got started. We haven't had a civil trial in the state of Nevada for a jury. We have not had a civil jury trial in Nevada since March. And I don't know from everything we've heard from the district court, we're not going to have one the rest of this year. And so the only thing that they've been trying to push forward are criminal cases for the same reasons we've talked about before, but civil. So that's where the point of all this is hey, COVID has impacted the trial settings of issues. Outside of that, we're good to go. It's okay to get your claim going. It's okay to move forward. We can move everything forward in that sense. But if you're one of those people that says, hey, it's either we're going to resolve this or I want to go to trial, just understand when you make that I'm going to trial statement, I don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah.
Take
your vitamins, watch your diet, because it could be a while. You want to live long enough to take the trial.
I've got word this last week that the state of Washington is doing trials now, and they're doing their trials via teleconference during Zoom, basically a giant Zoom meeting to pick juries, to put jury. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'm not sure how I feel about that. We haven't gotten word one way or the other from the Nevada Supreme Court or anything of that nature as to what they're going to do. But I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where the technology is starting to move. I'm wondering, a lot depends on Zoom. I mean, they may make the technology even better. That's one thing we always seem to see, right? Is that the more we become reliant on something, the better the technology seems to get. And so for all I know, Zoom's going to get better and better with their own software. But with that said, we just aren't doing civil trials yet. They haven't even started yet. This is all, everything we've been talking about when it comes to civil trials is still a conversation. We haven't actually had one since COVID began. What we have gotten to start doing is the discovery process, the process of preparing your case for trial. We are doing that, and that's all been predominantly remote.
Yeah, and there are other avenues to resolve your case. If you and if we can, with defense counsel, we can agree to a bench trial. So if just the judge is hearing it, and there's no jury. Wow, that streamlines things like crazy. You can do bench trial all day long. You could submit the case to something called binding arbitration, where there's no jury. You're just trying the case to either one or a panel of arbitrators and agree that decision will be binding, which I think a lot of people could also do. To get cases resolved, binding arbitration may be a great way to do that. But, a lot of people are squeamish, especially defense attorneys. It's usually the defense attorney who wants a jury, because a judge or an arbitrator is usually going to be more favorable, I think, to a plaintiff, depending on who the arbitrator is, obviously. But by and large, I think arbitration favors the plaintiff over the defendant. Bench trials, unless you have a really, there's a few judges who I'd be like, nope, I'm not letting him hear my case, or I'm not letting her do it.
That's true.
But the judge is only going to hear a few things, pretrial motions. If you have a jury trial, the reason a jury trial is so scary is because it's in a civil case in state court, at least, it's 8 people, and it's 6 out of the 8, and those are 6 out of 8 people that I've never met. I don't know who's going to show up that day. I don't know what people are going to end up in that box. We're going to be those last 8 people we end up with.
Yeah, we tell
clients,
they
could be terrible for me.
We tell clients all the time. When it comes to your trial, if you were to go to a trial, who your jury's going to be is a huge issue, and it's an answer. It's the issue that has an answer only on the day you're going to find out, because you don't know who your jury is. You're going to be like, well, who could your jury be? Well, they could be one of thousands of people, and I have no answer to any of those questions about what kind of a jury you're going to get, who they're going to be, until they're sitting in front of you. And that's the time when all of a sudden you might be really nervous about who you got. You may really not like the answer to the question when you actually have your jury pool.
Yeah. And you do the best you can as a lawyer to try and, that's really the focus of trial, is picking that jury is critical.
Yeah.
Critical, because the evidence is what the evidence is. You kind of know what the evidence is going to be, but you want a jury who's going to be receptive to the arguments and the evidence that you're going to put forward. And you just don't know what you're going to get. And I mean, I've been to trial before where we picked a jury and defense counsel looked at the jury and said, nope. And he takes my settlement offer and we're done. And I felt the same way. I've told my client, you know what, cross your fingers, because this isn't going to be pretty for us. That this is, it's a lot of retired, older people, super conservative people. I can tell they're just going to be really not receptive to my client's arguments. And they're scary. Jury trials are scary just because of the outcome. They're great, they're fun for the attorney. I like doing them, but this is my client's only shot. And I want him to have a good outcome, which is why 90, I don't even know the percentage, 97.
Oh, it's in the 90%. Yeah. By far and away, most
settle.
cases settle.
Yeah. Because of the unpredictability. You just don't know what you're going to get.
And because, as Corey said before, even before COVID, getting to trial took a long time. Yeah. Because of that trial stacking system. Nevada always notoriously had too few of judges for the sheer number of people that were living in the valley. And so the sheer number of cases that were coming, they just had too few of judges. So you had judges that were just getting inundated with cases, and they had to go by age of case. So they had age, but then they also had to go by constitutional requirements. Criminal is always going to go before civil. There's a statute in Nevada that says medical malpractice cases go before civil cases. So you had criminal cases, medical malpractice cases, age, all these things that kind of stack up against a case. So even before COVID, sometimes it was hard to get a trial. Now, I mean, it's even more complicated. So trials are going to be a squirrely thing. But the big thing is without giving you too much despair over the idea of trials, is the reality is that the rest of the process is moving forward, is actually getting pretty streamlined. And I think because of that long delay, I think one of the things Corey and I that there is going to be a benefit is I think there is going to be a bigger push to get cases resolved outside of trial. I think there's a lot of defense attorneys and defendants who don't really want to wait that long either. They'd rather get the case resolved. And so my hope is that some of this delay is actually going to motivate people to resolve claims, particularly ones that have significant merit. We're not really disputing the merits of the claim.
Yeah, I agree. And we're either going to have to move to a completely remote form of trial, or we're going to have to submit the matters to alternative dispute, mediation, arbitration, something like that, because the backlog, we're never going to get to the end. It'll never happen. We've got to figure out a way to get through these. So, I mean, even today I had a status hearing with the judge, and he pushed us hard on a settlement conference, and we're not ready because the defendant really hasn't done it. He hasn't even taken my client's deposition yet, which he didn't want to admit. And you know what? Here's a little secret that you don't understand about trial. For the most part, there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, we get along okay. The defense lawyer, I remember I was before I even went to law school, I was thinking about going to law school, and a friend of mine was a lawyer, and he goes, well, come to court and come to watch some motions. So he argued this motion with another attorney who I ended up working with later on, and they were in the courtroom and they are just going at it. It was heated. It was hot, and I'm like, wow, we got done. And I don't even remember who won. And I'm going, this is going to be so awkward when we walk out in the hall. And we walk out in the hallway, and the guy I was with goes, or actually the other guy says to the guy I was with, he goes, hey, good job in there. And so what are we going to do with this case? And they just start talking normally. I'm like, what? They're friends. And we get along, because you know what, as big as Las Vegas is, the legal community is still kind of small, and we got to work with these guys, and you don't want to burn a bridge, because once you're a jerk to somebody, they remember, and you're going to be that guy who needs a favor or needs a continuance, and you do not want to be that guy who said no or who's a total jerk to somebody else. So we just we normally get along anyway. So I didn't want to sell this guy out in front of the judge. So I said, yeah, we're not ready for settlement conference. Maybe the next time around. Because I really did want a settlement conference, but I know we're not ready, and we had to do some other stuff. There's no way we could have done it. But they're really pushing us to try to resolve cases, because that backlog is not going away anytime soon unless we start settling cases, or unless we get a handle on this vaccine and we really get serious about trying cases. I just don't see it.
The big thing I would tell you as we go forward is get comfortable in front of Zoom. So if you have a claim, You want to make sure that you're getting comfortable, because I don't think Zoom is going anywhere anytime soon. And I say it's Zoom, but the reality is any program that involves being in front of a camera, being online, and talking to people in front of a camera, you might want to get comfortable with it, because I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah. And it's our world, learn how to share your screen. Double check before you start talking that the mute's off,
So every time you talk to grandma and somebody's fumbling around going, am I on? Is this thing working? The reality is you're going to want to get comfortable with it, because I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
We're only going to get more and more into it, because every time I keep telling myself this is going to be over. Corey and I joke about this all the time about when COVID first started, we were like, how long do you think this is honestly going to last? Like a month, 2 months, 3 months? And now I see the money being spent to alter the courthouse, to courtrooms. We see all the stimulus money. I mean, all this money that's being spent, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So get comfortable with that technology, start to get familiar with it, because it's only going to it's going to stick with us for the next little stretch.
And people keep saying scary things like, oh, well, now we're never going to go back. Now we're doing this and it's working. Why would we ever go back? And I'm still not sure I'm okay with that, but I don't know,
right? I really don't know. I'd love the answer to that, because I agree with you. I see people go, oh man, we've been going on this. Why would we go back from doing in-person depositions versus Zoom depositions? Why not we just do everything via Zoom? I really could see that becoming the new normal. I hate that phrase because I think we're using it so often now, but I really could see that becoming kind of the new normal for depositions. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, some people think of it, when it comes to lawyers as a big game. The reality is it's not. It's what we call professionalism, right? I mean, it's attorneys, particularly attorneys who know what they're doing and that are particularly professional. You know that you can argue a case. I'm advocating. We use that word. I mean, that's a big deal for us. For a lot of the world, they look at it as like people doing gamesmanship. But for Corey and I mean, for attorneys, we're advocating a position. We are legal advocates. And we recognize that the defense attorneys do the same thing. They're advocates. And so for guys who really know what they're doing, I was in a hearing not too long ago where I was, you almost felt like you were in a shouting match with defense counsel, and he and I are good friends. He and I have litigated, I don't know how many cases against each other over the past 20 years. And I know when I go into a hearing with him, I'm going to get his full attention. He's going to come at me full steam in his case. But at the same time, it's not personal. He's not sitting there to attack me. He's trying to defend his client. I'm representing my client. And Corey's right. There's an aspect of it when you go down to court and you see those guys, there is a camaraderie to it, recognizing that we are still advocates for our clients.
Yeah. And like in a trial, things are super tense the whole trial, until the jury gets the case. There's nothing else to argue. There's nothing else to say.
Then the case is done.
Jury has a case. Once they do that, it's kind of fun you're nervous about the verdict, obviously. What's the jury going to come back with? But, it's like no hard feelings.
Yeah.
We're doing,
I've had defense attorneys literally tell me, I hope they give your client money, because I feel bad for your client. But they're an advocate. They weren't there to be objective. They were there to represent their client. I respect that. Well, we hope you like the show as we wrap it up here. If you have questions, because there are going to be questions, Pete, if you have questions about like what do we think if there are going to be any adjustments, any changes, we're not here to discuss whether or not we think masks are a good thing or a bad thing, or whether or not, the policies that are getting driven out here are good or bad policies. The reality is, as Corey and I work within a system in which we get told from the Nevada Supreme Court how it's going to be, and then we adapt. Yeah. We adapt to what we've been instructed we're supposed to do from the Nevada Supreme Court. Sometimes those orders come from the governor's office, but by and large for Corey and I, ours come from the court system itself as to how things are going to be done. And so we don't sit there and we're not going to rant and rave about whether or not it's a good policy or bad policy. The reality is it is what it is, and we adapt to it. So if you have any questions about how things are going, where things are moving, put them in the comment section. We're happy to do a show or an episode where we answer those questions, because the reality is the whole point of this show is to give you guys information, let you know kind of how things are going and how we adapt to it. So claims are still moving forward. We want you to make sure that's your big takeaway.
Yeah, don't despair. I mean, we've talked about all the negatives of COVID, but honestly, unless we have to file a lawsuit, which is pretty rare in terms of the number of cases we handle, unless we have to file a lawsuit, none of this is going to impact you. things are pretty much normalized as far as that goes. Don't despair. You still have a claim. You still have a case. Chances are we'll be able to get it resolved and get you the compensation that you deserve. But in the unlikely event that it goes to litigation, there's going to be some snags for a bit.
So with that said, hope you enjoyed the show. Hit like, hit subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. We would really like you if you like it as opposed to not like it. But hey, we'll take whatever. So thanks for watching Fairly Legal with us. We'll see you next time.
Bye.